Hey there, Variety here. Welcome to today's video in which we're going to be doing a class guide on the Omni Warrior for Fantasy Tales Sword and Magic. So the Omni Warrior would be a tank slash DPS class, depending on which spec you run him into, which would definitely make him the second possible tank currently in Fantasy Tales. So in today's video, we're going to have a look at the tank build, which will focus on less on shielding like the other tank does, and more on uh, extra defense, AoE, or AoE taunting. And the second build is going to be focused more on DPS if that's what you want to do. Okay, so let's jump into the first build. Let's open up skills. Okay, so we'll have a look at the skills and then we'll have a look at the talents. So Valorous Charge, basically what this does is it charges at the enemy. So you pick a target, it charges at them, it stuns them, and it does damage to everyone around or in front of you. So basically, it stuns the target you click and does damage to the other ones right next to it. That's basically what it does. Roaring Wind. So Roaring Wind will allow you to use like a hurricane with your sword, and it will allow you to move. This may not sound very useful for a tanky class, but in the talents, which I will show you, if you have enough talent points, you can actually reduce the damage you take while in this ability, so it's actually both defensive and aggressive. Omni Strike. So the Omni Warrior delivers a powerful blow, causing a lot of physical damage. I put a fair few points in this. A lot of my build is focused around AoE, so I definitely wanted an ability that could do some decent damage single target, because even though you're not DPS, you're not really out for damage, hitting like a wet noodle doesn't feel very good. So what this does is it actually gives extra hatred, and it can stack up to 3 times, and stacks every 6 seconds. So every 18 seconds, you'll get to use this 3 times, and it's a guaranteed ability to pull the mob off. I'm sure you've tanked before and you were unable to get the aggro back because DPS just did too much DPS. This is the ability for you. It'll guarantee you hold the aggro on whatever mob you hit. Eye of the Storm. So the Omni Warrior drags up to 6 enemies, so it drags them in and does a bunch of damage. You cannot keep using this on the same enemy though. So, but it's 15 seconds between the times you can use it, and the cooldown's 12 seconds. So honestly, just wait a couple of seconds after it comes off cooldown before you use it again, and you'll be able to pull the mobs back in. If you use, for example, Charge to rush in, Eye of Storm to pull them in, Roaring Wind to do AoE damage, it's a pretty good combo. So let's have a look at the talents real quick. So here we have Titan. So each enemy hit by Eye of the Storm, the ability that pulls them in, will increase your damage reduction by 3% and get an extra damage reduction by 3% for each enemy hit with a maximum of 32%. Basically, after you've rushed in with Charge, you pull them in and you take less damage, right? You don't want to be taking full damage if you just pull in 10 mobs. That would be very bad. Okay, so let's look at Absorption. After releasing Warcry, the hatred caused within 5 seconds additionally is increased by 400%. Basically, what this does is when you use your ultimate, which is over here, which we'll talk about in a second, it increases your hate and reduces their movement speed and their healing and stuff like that. And damage increase. Basically, it's a bit of a steroid where you kind of go Super Saiyan and get more powerful and get more hate to enemies that are on top of you. So let's see what it actually does though. So down here, the Omni Warrior lets out a roar that immobilizes and slows debuffs and taunts surrounding enemies. When Warcry is activated, Omni Warrior recovers equivalent of 4% of his HP every 5 seconds. Now this may not seem like a lot, but you can use this, how often? Cooldown every 20 seconds, and you can regen a total of 20% of your HP. So you'd keep using this to taunt, do some damage, get more powerful, and to heal. So basically, you'll be using this quite often. Courage. The damage of Courage Charge is increased by 12%. After stunning the target, it'll give you a Courage effect. Taking damage will increase your damage penetration by 2% and defense. So let's say you've just charged into a bunch of, say, 10 mobs, right? Then you've used your AoE ability, which is your Eye of the Storm, and then you've used your Roaring Wind, where you're in the middle of all the mobs. every time you get hit while you're under all these, extra tank stats, you're then taking getting more buffs with defense because you keep getting hit. So it'll increase your defense even more. So honestly, this ability is great and really good for AoE fights. I wish I had more talent points to put into them. Roaring wind damage plus 16% and become immune to control. This is great if you got crowd controlled while in here. It'd be very annoying. And Cyclone is going to be a lot of your damage after you pull the mobs in. So more damage is great. However, it is damage. So, if you're a tank, so not to prioritize here unless you're feeling, a little bit spicy. Okay, so Seer. I have the storm damage by 10%. Targets will have to reduce by 60%. Let's see. Your Omni Strike causes damage. A small area increases crit rate by 20%. So basically, this makes Omni Strike a bit more powerful and reduces the speed. In most PvE circumstances, this is not very useful. A bit more damage, but nothing really in regards to tank. Using Warcry while your HP is lower than 50% reduces 30% of damage penetration. So basically, it makes you tankier. While using Warcry while your HP is lower than 20% will restore your HP to 32%. Also reduce damage penetration by 10%. Trigger this effect does not trigger a lifesteal per second. Basically what this does is it makes you tankier and it heals you if you use your Warcry while on low HP. Hurricane, Roaring Wind plus 6% damage and plus 6% damage reduction. So Roaring Wind, when you're using it, it'll not only give you extra damage, which is what you're going to be a lot of your damage, but it gives you damage reduction, which is fantastic. I would definitely go with more points in a hit if I could. Okay, so enough about the talents and skills. Let's have a look at them. Okay, so we're going to rush ahead. We're going to pull them in. Then we're going to use our AoE. As you can see, I can move around. While doing that, I'd have 6% damage reduction, and I would be doing a lot extra damage. So again, I charged the wrong one there. So let's wait until the cooldown comes back up. So this is the R. That is the basically rage increasing ability. So if I actually click here, I can pick where I want to go. So let's go to the middle target. Hit him to make sure we got full aggro. Pull in any extra mobs. And then power up. You want to weave your Omni Strike in between your other abilities because, it recharges extra charges. But yeah, so that is basically everything you need to know about the tank stance for the Omni Warrior. So let's move on and have a look at the DPS build. So let's have a look at the DPS build. We're going to do this one a little bit more quickly. Let's have a look at the skills we're going to be using. We're going to use Charge to charge at the enemy and stun the enemy. We're going to use Crescent Moon. Crescent Moon is going to do a arc of damage in front of you, which will be buffed with your other ability. Roaring Wind will, of course, do AoE damage, and it's got buffs involved. And Blade Frenzy will do single target damage to an enemy, and after you've hit a target 3 times with it, it'll actually make it so your Crescent Moon will do its attack twice. So let's have a look at the talents. So Justice grants the Retribution buff whenever Retribution within 2 meters. Basically what this means is that when you use Retribution, which is your Shatter ability, it jumps on the enemy and it gives you a shield for each enemy hit. But each time you use this or you use your charge, it's going to buff you with Retribution. So each time that you do it, it buffs up by 3%, 1.5% crit damage, movement speed, and max stacks for 14 seconds. Basically, each time you use the ability, it puts a stacking buff on you, so it's great. But you definitely want to get points into here. 12% by Crescent Moon. Casting Crescent Moon has a 15% chance of triggering an extra Crescent Moon effect. Basically, this is great. It's double damage if it procs. 16% Roaring Wind damage. Each time damage is dealt, this talent deals extra Cyclone damage to one enemy. This is great. You're going to be using Cyclone quite a bit, so extra damage is great. Frenzy, 8% damage and 24% damage reduction with each Blade Frenzy hit. You're going to be doing a lot of Blade Frenzy attacks to reset your Crescent Moon, and because it does high single target damage, so damage reduction and extra damage is fantastic. Crusher. So Crusher, the charge increased by 6% and applies Scar to the enemy. Okay. The charge damage increased by 12%, applies Scar to the target. Where is Scar? I believe Scar is elsewhere. I believe it's in the first tab. Yes, so the damage to the target is increased by 8%. And each time this is refreshed, the target will be attacked one time for 240% damage. So basically, your charge activates the Scar. Okay, so back to the second tab. So that's why I don't really level it up, because all it does is it activates the Scar. It doesn't actually do much by itself. Bravery, 2% physical mastery, also gain physical boost with each crit strike. Physical boost, more mastery, stacks up to a max of 2 for 8 seconds. This is great, it basically makes you do more damage. Pummeler, 16% Blade Frenzy damage every 3 times you hit the target with Blade Frenzy. The next Crescent Moon will trigger a second Crescent Moon automatically, retained for up to 30 seconds. So, with the Crescent Moon, you're trying to do, you do an AoE ability and you want it to proc. I'll show you here. So this is Crescent Moon here. So right now there's like a 15% chance of that happening twice. But if you hit them 3 times with your single target ability, Blade Frenzy, it will guarantee the next time you use this, within a 30-second time limit, it will proc it. So I'm going to line it up right now. Okay, so in a couple more seconds, we're going to use our third one, and we're going to proc this ability here. Okay, watch it double proc. See how double did it? Okay. So basically what you do is you charge. You want to get your buff up. Here is your shield ability, which will give you a shield and give you another buff. And you're going to weave your Cyclone in between. So Cyclone, use a single target. I don't think you need to use the jump effect all the time. But, you know, I just weave it in there if I have time between my abilities. Single target. So I've got no cooldown, so I use this again. Keep the buff going. I want to get the buff back up. Okay, I'm back up to 2. And now we do a double moon. Yeah, I think that covers everything you need to know for the DPS spec for the Omni Warrior. I hope this video helps you decide if this is the class you wish to play. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.